Welcome to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. I'm Richie. I'm going to be your host. Throughout the series, we're going to talk to a range of different people who will give you tools and tips to help manage your recovery. The podcast itself is being brought to you by Epic Restart Foundation, who are a national charity who support people to rebuild a positive life after gambling harm. So today I'm joined by Dot Smith, who I'm very excited to have a conversation with. Dot, do you want to tell us a little bit about why you've come on a podcast called the Recovery Toolkit and what is it that you do in recovery at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, recovery and toolkits are words that go hand in hand. I lead an organisation, a lived experience charity called Recovery Connections, founded in Middlesbrough but based in the northeast, and it's wholly centred around helping people build their toolkit to live life successfully in recovery.
Yeah, so Recovery Connections it's one of them organisations where I just look at and just constantly go, wow. Like, because there's so much happening all over the place. It's been quite a period of rapid growth. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When
absolutely.
did it start?
We were founded in 2008 by 3 members of the local Middlesbrough recovery community who identified a gap. And at that time, there wasn't many lived experience-led organisations around the country, let alone the northeast. And they identified that, once treatment finishes, it's the what next that creates people to have a problem, really, and for their recovery to be a little bit rocky and isolated, especially at that time. If you weren't a member of the 12-step fellowships, there literally wasn't anything else.
Yeah, and that's something that we resonate with at Epic Restart Foundation. We thought there was a bit of a gap in provision, and it got labelled aftercare, which I don't really like. I like to call recovery pathway, because I think that's what it should always be.
Yeah.
But every time we look and go, drugs and alcohol, they're a little bit ahead of us. It's kind of yourselves that we look up to and go, well, what are they doing that we can potentially learn from? So what were the big things that you had to change or implement to give people a chance in long-term recovery?
Yeah, I mean, I joined in 2015 and, I'm at the grand old age. I've been employed 41 years in September this year, which I keep saying a lot recently because it scares me, because I think, where's those 41 years gone? But ultimately, I started my career in mental health at a time when large psychiatric hospitals housed, I worked at Winterton Hospital where there was, about 900 patients who largely, shouldn't have ever been hospitalised, should have been living their life in recovery, in mental health recovery, in communities and doing really well. So I think, when I joined Recovery Connections, I'd been working in the drug and alcohol field for 24 years now. Back then it was 15 years. And I think, again, I was always in the treatment space up until about 2011 when a residential rehab was commissioned in Durham, County Durham, where I was working, and we were given that contract to deliver on. So although I'd been on my own kind of recovery journey for a long time, it was the first time that I'd worked within addiction recovery in terms of abstinence and helping people achieve sobriety, but then also learn to live. And I loved that learn to live element. And when there was an opportunity at Hope North East, as we were then, there was a chief exec vacancy. It just felt like my dream job. That's what I wanted to do. The title scared me to death, because I've never had a career plan, never really felt that I could ever hold a job with such a fancy title. But fundamentally, I knew what to do with people. I know what people need. I know what the culture and values an organisation like that needs. And I took the risk and took the jump and got there and really started to rebuild the organisation from the ground up, rebuild the foundations. Because at the time I didn't feel that the foundations were there and that actually what Hope North East existed for was true to our mission, but didn't have the building blocks and the opportunities that people really need. People need more than a space.
And what are some of them building blocks? What are some of them real core foundations that you had to implement early on to be able to achieve what you've achieved now?
All very foundational. The culture of the charity and the culture of a lived experience organisation is really fundamental. The culture has to keep everybody safe. It's got to keep our staff safe, our volunteers safe, but fundamentally, the people that walk through the door, we all have to be aligned to the same values and a culture of recovery, because a culture of recovery is all about gratitude, giving back, doing the next right thing, holding hope for everybody that walks through the door. Hope is absolutely fundamental to everything that we do.
Yeah, and a few times you've mentioned a lived experience organisation. Some people might be thinking, well, what does that mean? Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that actually means at its heart?
At its heart, we have around about 115 staff now. Well over 90% of our staff have their own recovery journey. Most of them, it's their own recovery journey out of addiction into recovery. For some of our staff, it's a recovery journey that's associated with parental addiction or spouse, family member addiction at whatever level. I identify as a family member that's grown up in a household impacted by alcoholism and domestic abuse. And what my recovery journey has run parallel to somebody who's alongside their own recovery journey. We still have to do a lot of that work because, I'm fortunate I haven't gone down the route of dependence, but I've had a lot of problematic phases in my life, whether that's around alcohol or whether that's around relationships. So we have to find out fundamentally who we are, find out, who we are, what's happened in our lives that's impacted on who we are, but also we need an opportunity to allow that person within to grow, blossom, thrive and succeed with confidence.
Yeah, and there's some real, important things I think in there around self. Mm-hmm. And it's about individuals, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And for me, if we can help individuals find out who they truly are, and then give them the confidence to go and be themselves, they've got a chance.
Absolutely. And everybody's different. One size absolutely doesn't fit all. And as Recovery Connections, we would describe ourselves as being many pathways. You can come to us and we will help you. We'll help you be a member of a community, which is really important. We know how dangerous isolation is for people and disconnection. We want people, we welcome everybody with a warm welcome, and we have love, care and compassion for everybody. We believe everybody can. A lot of our staff are people that have been, within their treatment journey, have been seen as, for them, their next step is probably death. We believe everybody can recover, because I've seen people who've been written off by criminal justice, by health and social care, by the addiction treatment providers. I've seen them being people who've been deemed hopeless.
With those people, Dot, what do you think are the biggest things that somebody who's been written off by everybody else needs? What do you think it is that Recovery Connections offers somebody in that position?
Well, first and foremost, they need connection. And they need, when they connect with somebody who's been exactly where they are, it opens up those possibilities. And once you open up that belief in somebody that they too can recover, then, there's no lid. There's no stopping place. It's about, somebody having something to get up for every day, and that hope and belief and agency, giving people that sense of agency that they are in control of this. They can write their own future. And then for us, it's just about helping that journey start, start that journey, but start that journey in a safe place and start to travel that journey and growing as you go. We don't go from A to B in a month. This stuff takes time. And I think what Recovery Connections does is provide that time. It provides those role models. It provides that safe space with a good, solid culture of recovery that thrives on the positive values that we hold as a staff team and as an organisation that, just gets people to lift the head up. Once you get somebody to lift the head up and start to believe in their future, then they have a chance.
Yeah, so I love the phrase that you use, culture of recovery. And obviously we work similar, and we hopefully help people get out of a culture of addiction and get into a culture of recovery. What does that mean, a culture of recovery? What does that look like for somebody listening or watching this?
Yeah.
Explain what that is.
So our culture of recovery, and again, this is about Recovery Connections. A culture of recovery might look different for somebody else, but for us, our culture of recovery is about coming together with other people, and it's taken that self, that selfishness away, and it's about sitting with other people. It's about being kind. It's about being considerate. It's about having dignity for yourself, but also helping other people find what their dignity looks like. It's about believing in the power of hope. It's heart-driven. It's, always giving somebody a warm welcome and always welcoming people back. That's so important. People's journeys are not a straight line. People's journeys are not linear, and not everybody gets recovery the first time. But for people who don't get it that first time and, they might disappear for a little while, they know that they can come back and they will get that same warm welcome. There's no judgment. Nobody's shamed. We don't use shaming language. We don't call people service users and clients, because that's a power imbalance. Mm-hmm. We have no more power. Just because you're on the payroll doesn't give you any more power than somebody that's just walked through our door for the first time. We travel alongside each other together, and that's a strong culture of recovery.
Yeah, and I love that. I think it's everyone's equal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everybody's equal, and
yeah.
I think it's important you mentioned there, recovery isn't linear.
No.
Recovery is far from, a straight line from culture of addiction to culture of recovery. That just doesn't happen, does it?
No.
And in my early recovery, I spent a lot of time in Gamblers Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few things that were good about it, but there's a few things that I thought, but that doesn't really work for me.
Yeah.
And having to declare when I had last had a bet and how many days it was or months or years and all that sort of stuff, that just didn't work for me, because in my head I was going, well, if I have a bet here, how am I ever going to come back and tell them that that date's changed?
Yeah.
So the fact that there's organisations and places and communities where actually it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter whether it's your 1 day, 100 days or 10 years. Mm-hmm. You're just another human being. Mm-hmm. I think that's the important thing, isn't it, about Recovery Connections, and what you allow to be put out there about yourselves is anytime you need us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've got staff who've got... maybe a year in recovery. We've got staff who are double digits in recovery. Collectively, we've got well over 400 years of recovery experience. And all of that experience will be different, and all of those journeys will be different. We don't condition people to do it the Recovery Connections way. It's about helping people to find what works for them. And we also, a lot of people who come through our doors to join the community and the community of support will then go on and do what we call our ambassador program. So they'll do an accredited qualification that gives them some of the entry-level skills to start to consider a career within health and social care, not necessarily Recovery Connections. Equally, we have a lot of people who never want to work in recovery, and that's great too. We have a wealth of experience within our community. And we talk about, a fancy title of recovery capital. What that means is people have a lot of life experience. Some people have never worked, but for a lot of people, they've had careers, and they've had careers in areas that is really useful to bring into a recovery community that can then help other people. So, it's about helping people find out who they are, find out where they want to go, and that changes. We change as people. It's not about you come into recovery and I need to give back to recovery for the next X amount of years. You don't have to give anything back. You give back to yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And you see that though, don't you? Everyone in early recovery, all they want to do is give back and help everybody else.
Yeah.
And sometimes they've got to just go and work on themselves, haven't they, and look after themselves first and foremost.
Yeah.
You mentioned there your ambassador program, and that's kind of like an entry into gaining some experience, some qualification. Tell us a little bit about that pathway. So if people come and join an ambassador program, what's on offer for them?
Yeah. So the ambassador program gives you a level 2 accredited qualification. But within that 12-week program, it's around, learning about boundaries. Boundaries is so important when we work with other people because we can give too much of ourselves. You get the fancy title of compassion fatigue. You can just burn yourself out because you want to help everybody. So boundaries is really important. Keeping yourself safe, looking at safeguarding, confidentiality, key components of keeping yourself safe, keeping individuals that you're supporting safe, but keeping organisations safe as well, making sure that you're able to show up and be aware of all of that stuff and when that stuff goes wrong, what might happen. Communication skills. A lot of our community members and our staff, we are their first employer. Communication is fundamental to everything. Showing up in a way that engenders trust and respect. I'm within the organisation, I'm affectionately known as the swearing police. I'm a bit old-fashioned. I am, I guess I've worked a long time, as I said earlier. So it's about being able to show up in a way that is going to be, it's going to help people trust you, but it's going to help people want to work with you. It's, swearing can be a little bit scary for people who's had experience of trauma. They might have been swore at. Tone of voice, being able to communicate in a tone of voice that's non-threatening. Trauma-informed is a word that's bandied about all over now, but, it's just about basic human connection and being compassionate and, showing up in a way that helps people feel at ease with you.
Yeah, definitely. I've got to watch my P's and Q's now, I think. And my boss, Sharon, she says that to me all the time as well. And I always say, well, but if I deliver it with a smile on my face and in a soft tone voice, it's all right, isn't it? But it is that though, isn't it? It's about learning how to communicate.
Yeah. Because
we've still got to be authentic. We've still got to be ourselves, but we've got to do it within some boundaries as well, haven't we? So that people can connect and can see the real person, but also feel safe. Yeah. Because that has to be the most important thing, surely, isn't it? That people feel safe. Yeah,
safety is paramount. I mean, we work with people and our staff team. We are all people that have experienced trauma. We are all triggered. And it's, we talk about bringing our whole self to work. I might have the fanciest title in the organisation, but I'm as vulnerable as the next person if there's something playing out within an environment that triggers me. And it's been safe enough to share that with each other. We don't see that as a weakness. We see that as a huge strength. One of our values is authenticity. I'm challenged within the organisation by community members, by ambassadors, by staff members, because I don't always get things right. And that for me is respect. I think that can be deemed in other organisational cultures as a lack of respect for the top person, but I see silence and shutting a door and moaning as being more disrespectful than trusting that you're able to come to me and say, actually, Dot, what you said there was rubbish, or this thing that you've brought in isn't working. That that the respect comes in Recovery Connections when we talk about that stuff, because ultimately we have to get it right for the people that walk through the door, but equally we have to get it right for the staff as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know you mentioned 110-ish staff now.
Yeah.
That's some size organisation now, isn't it?
It is. And we never intended to get this big. That was never on the plan.
Why did it?
Why did it? That's a great question. I think we've got this big because of opportunity. And there's been, I've been around a long time and I've seen a lot of money come into drug and alcohol services, and I've seen a lot of money being taken out where people have got their bog standard needs met and nothing more. And as the money's come back in to the treatment, so has the recognition that recovery support is meaningful. And, as one of the founding members of CLERO, the College of Lived Experience Recovery Organisations, we've done a lot of lobbying at various levels around recovery support, not just being the fluffy stuff. A good friend and colleague, Dave Hyam from The Well, talks about the fluffy stuff. We recognise that the social stuff that we provide is really important when you've been isolated and disconnected. Learning to be around others and learning to laugh again in recovery is life-giving and life-saving. So as that recovery support has been recommissioned again within local authority treatment commissioning, there's been an opportunity for recovery. And, unfortunately, there's not a lot of lived experience recovery in the North East. And I believe that where there is an Indigenous recovery community organisation, we shouldn't be given money if we're not already part of that recovery landscape. And we're not a part of every recovery landscape in the North East. But now we're at a size where we should be helping that lived experience recovery organisation grassroots grow. For a lot of organisations, they don't ever want to be commissioned, because when you're commissioned, then life can get a bit tricky within a LERO, because we need such a robust infrastructure. And we had that from, when I joined in 2015, in 2016, they put the recovery and rehab element out to tender. And at the time, naively, I didn't want to subcontract. I wanted to go for it because I believed we could do it. And we won it. And, within 2 years, we were rated outstanding by CQC. That put us in a position where we became a good bet for national organisations to ask us to subcontract to them, which we did. We subcontracted to CGL in Gateshead and Sunderland and Stockton, and we still do. But equally, it gave us the evidence that we were commissionable in a direct way. So we're now commissioned directly in Middlesbrough, Redcar, Cleveland, Darlington and Hartlepool. And every time one of those opportunities has come to us, because we haven't got a business plan, we haven't got a growth plan, we've sat as a senior leadership team and said, does it feel right here? Is it a heart and soul? Does it feel right? Generally, it does. Does it feel right, in your head? Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we kind of But we have to get somewhere in the middle where we think, if we don't do this, will it sit with an organisation that doesn't do this stuff well because it's not their bread and butter? And that generally gets us to the yes.
Yeah, and I love that, isn't it? There's a layer of vulnerability in that, what you've just said. But ultimately, it's like, if we're not going to do this, who is? Mm-hmm. And let's take it. It's pushing the boundaries, our boundaries, and it's pushing our growth, and it's pushing us to a place where potentially might make us at more risk in other areas. Yeah. But actually, because we care, we want to do it.
And it's about the staff, Richie. We employ staff in recovery, and we look after staff really well in terms of their well-being. And our policies are pro-recovery. Some staff return to use. Of course they do. Addiction is a relapsable health condition. People don't do well all of the time, but we ensure that we look after people well so that we spot those things starting to happen. We can talk to our staff in a way that, helps them know that we can see that you're not well right now. What can we do to get you back to a place of wellness? We employ a lot of staff that have never, ever been employed before. So we operate as an organisation in a very, we've talked about culture of recovery, that's fundamental, but we're a bit more flexible. Yeah. We have I guess, a bigger tolerance to learning on the job than other organisations can give. So we want to employ more people in recovery because, we've never really calculated the cost benefit of us employing people at probably a stage in their recovery where other organisations wouldn't, and actually it wouldn't be right for either party to employ people. But we can employ people a bit less experienced than other organisations because we help people build those skills and continuously grow their recovery capital, because that doesn't stop when you get a job, and it shouldn't. And, we also understand and have seen staff get jobs with other organisations who haven't done really well, because once you're in that paid employment, it's get on with it now.
Yeah, and I think it's important sometimes. I think when you're employed to do a job, you've got to show up and do the job.
Yeah.
But actually having an employer who has an understanding of recovery when you're in recovery yourself, I think there's so much added value to that.
Yeah.
And if you're a people person organisation, you've got to put the people first.
You do.
And if you've got people in employed roles supporting other people in recovery, you've got to make sure that they've got an opportunity to be well. And support them through that.
Yeah, and it doesn't always go well.
Yeah.
We don't always get successful outcomes from employment, and that's okay as well. We have robust HR policies and procedures that we still use. It's not that people join us as a paid member of staff and get away with whatever. That's not the case at all, because what I want to see people join our organisation and see their career as being never-ending. Our deputy chief exec now, Jenny, joined us as a volunteer. I've known Jenny a long time prior to Hope North East. We've got a lot of staff who've joined us as volunteers who are now in management positions. I was late to launch in my career. I don't want that for people. I want people to have the belief in them that, put the work in, because you have to put the work in. Let's be honest, we don't give somebody a job because we like them. We have a job to do, and I think our success is based on having the right people in the right roles with the right values. And we have grown, and our biggest risk was our culture, because when you start to grow, especially over a region, then you can quite quickly lose your culture. And I'm really, really delighted that we haven't lost our culture, because we invest so much time and effort into that, but also because our community members live our culture, thrive within our culture, then become a volunteer or ambassador, and then come into paid employment. So that culture is instilled right from the very beginning. So we've been able to really hold that. And when we see our culture going astray, we're straight in there. We're straight in there, because we can't allow it to go astray.
Yeah, it's the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, so you've mentioned ambassadors, people getting paid employment, manage. Tell us about that journey, what somebody can potentially go on. I know you just mentioned Jenny there, but Jenny's probably not the example, because she's not the norm. She,
she actually is.
Yeah,
to be honest. Richie, our senior leadership team, Tracy is a regional manager now. Tracy's journey, similar to Jenny, they've had a very similar journey. Tracy's journey started at a different place within Recovery Connections, but both, will start at the volunteer, and both became volunteers. Both did the ambassador programme. Both joined as relief members of staff. So that's it's not a contract, but it's a temporary workers contract that where you fill in here and there where we're a bit short, and you start to build those key employment employability
Skills,
experiences and skills. Both took, I think Jenny's role initially was program support in the rehab. Tracy was a rehab coach. Jenny then took on a community lead, then came up to Gateshead as the service manager, then came as a deputy regional manager. Tracy was service manager in rehab lead in Gateshead, service manager in Darlington, and has just recently been successful with the regional manager's role. Most of our team leaders and service managers have followed that exact journey. We've got Lindsay, who joined the senior leadership team from another organisation, but she's us. You know, we describe people of like, yeah, you one of us. You know, you have to be people first. As a senior leadership team, we are never far from the front line. You know, we get involved right from the front line, and if you can't do that, then you generally don't fit with us. If you want to join us within a management role, Poppy Beale's just joined us in Stockton as the service manager. She is one of us, and she works like us. But she hasn't got a legacy in Recovery Connection. She's joined us, but you have to still be able to, you know, if I had to go back following this meeting and we were short in one of the recovery centres, I know I can still go back and do that job. I love doing that job, and I think for me as the chief exec, the thing that I like least about the growth is it's took me further away from that, but I still need to touch that every day.
Yeah, and I feel that. I think a lot of people get into certain roles, you know, so even go through ambassador into coach roles, whatever that may look like, and that's what they're really passionate about, is working with people, helping people progress.
Yeah.
And like you just said there, sometimes then those successful people end up in management roles and they're like, well, how did I end up here? What,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I've just done a leadership course with yourselves.
Yeah.
And being on that leadership course on day one, I think what the first question asked was, do you see yourself as a leader or manager? And I can honestly see 95% of people in that room are like, no, any chance.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why are you on a leadership and management course? Because somebody sees something in you. But by the end of that course, they could all see a progression. They could all see a route into leadership or management roles.
Yeah.
And I just thought that's instilling the confidence and self-belief in people from within that allows them to then take the next step in their journey.
Yeah.
But had they not had the opportunity to do a training course on it, they probably would have never had their eyes open to what that actually means and looks like for an organisation.
Yeah, and our ambition is for every member of staff and ambassadors to do that programme. It's going to take us a while for capacity for everybody to get that chance, but they're all leaders in their own way.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not very good at management. You know, when I was in a management position, I didn't particularly enjoy it because I'm not a detail person. You know, and I think you need that skill set. Some people are the detail person and they're very organised. And, you know, Jenny is a phenomenal mobiliser because she is a detail person. I'm not. I see the vision and I feel my way through it.
Yeah, totally.
And you know, it is about bringing everybody's skill set together, and no skill set's better than the other. You know, we need them all. Catherine, our finance manager, she's got no history in recovery. She joined us from another organisation. She's one of us. You know, I think initially she probably thought, dear me.
What am I getting myself into?
Yeah, but she's one of us because recovery's infectious, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
You don't have to be in recovery to live a life within the values of recovery. Yeah. And it's just a beautiful way of life. It's a beautiful thing to be a part of. It's
inspiring though, isn't it? You know, like we talk about recovery capital, you know, recovery journeys, all of that sort of stuff. But I can often replace the word recovery just to like being a better version of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're around loads of people who are trying to be a better version of themselves, it's quite an empowering and inspiring, powerful place to be, isn't it?
It is. And I think, you know, when you see people find their purpose, when they've been inspired by hope, and when they start to find their own agency, that they believe in their own potential and they believe that they can do something, I mean, it's absolute magic. It is. And to be a part of that and to see that happen and to see people grow and change and impact on their own lives, but then start to impact on other people's lives, impact on their local community. They're all leaders. You know, they're all leaders in their own right, in their own way. And, you know, I want everybody to feel, because you have to feel recovery. You have to feel, and yet, you know, recovery has so many connotations, whether it's a journey, a physical health journey into recovery, whether it's an emotional and mental health journey into recovery. It's all about having that belief that what today feels like doesn't have to be tomorrow, doesn't have to be next month. And actually, in 5 years' time, this is my aspiration for me. And then when you're working with coaches and working with people who want to travel alongside you, who hold that aspiration on your behalf and are committed to, you know, helping you figure out that next step and figure out that journey, and then hold you accountable because they care enough to hold you accountable, that can be quite challenging and not everybody welcomes it. But once, you know, people start to trust that process, there's no stopping them.
Yeah.
No stopping them.
It's a great thing to witness as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. And, you know, I'm grateful to have had the opportunity, because I've been employed 41 years, you know, that's a long time. And sometimes I start to feel a little bit sad that I'm not going to be around long enough to see, you know, some of the younger, because there's a lot of younger people coming into recovery, and that's amazing. You know, we've got a girl called Poppy who's 25. She's an absolute, you know, she's phenomenal, and I can't wait to see where she goes and where she is at my age. And then I suddenly realise, well, I'm probably not going to be around. But, you know, I remember people who, you know, when I started work at 16, in my own life, I wasn't in a stable position, and I wasn't for the next 20 years. But I always had somebody who was 20 odd years or 30 years older than me that saw potential in us and always looked after us, you know, in a parental way, but also in a way that made me feel good, because somebody with that job title believed in me. So I used to think, well, if they believe in us, then I must be able to do it. And yeah, it's organic. You know, it's organic. It's about treating the soil, isn't it, for the next generations. And I don't want everybody who works at Recovery Connections to stay with Recovery Connections. They shouldn't. I want them to believe that they can go somewhere else and take the culture and values of Recovery Connections into another organisation and help other organisations become more recovery friendly.
Yeah, and that's the biggest testament to yourself, isn't it? When your culture starts infiltrating in other places and starts growing other places. Yeah. Something that you have also been involved in is recovery cities, is it inclusive recovery cities? Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, I mean, inclusive recovery cities started in the Balkans about 7 or 8 years ago, and Mulka Nisic, who is an academic, started to see the concept of the ripple effect of recovery communities within a local area. And Professor David Best, who we work quite closely with, got involved in that. And, you know, they've created the kind of key components of what a good recovery city can look like. We started working with them a couple of years ago. And what I recognised within the framework of recovery cities was stuff that we're already doing. You know, it's about taking recovery into the community, because, you know, the history of addiction recovery is through 12-step fellowships. It's been hidden because one of their traditions is anonymity. And I absolutely respect that and honour that. Absolutely. Not everybody wants to be seen as a person in recovery because of the stigma. But unless we start to put a face on recovery, that stigma is always going to be there. So inclusive recovery cities is a way of developing recovery, visible recovery within local communities through events. So you commit to putting forward visible recovery events on a year. We already do that, and we've done that. We do that everywhere. We're always visible. We're visible in so many ways, whether it's our social enterprise, whether it's the free hot coffee bike out on the streets, whether it's our staff walking around with a hoodies on just having conversations. We have the Recovery Ally training package, which we've had for a number of years, actually. I mean, I was kindly gifted that in 2017 when I did a Churchill Fellowship looking at collegiate recovery in America. But, you know, the 2 years of COVID stopped the development of a lot of things, so we're re-energising that. But we train anybody and everybody within the local area to be a recovery ally, to think about language that's used, to be more compassionate, to understand what addiction is and where it might come from, to understand the problems and issues that people face when they're in addiction and what the barriers are to recovery. And shame is a massive barrier. And to give them the tools to be able to signpost people to help, you know, where that help might be. So we're generating recovery capital within the places that we work so that the whole area can be recovery friendly.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's amazing to witness and see. Working in recovery, being surrounded by people in recovery, employing people who are in recovery, how do you look after yourself?
Aye, that's a great question, Richie. We're not very good, are we, at looking after ourselves sometimes because, you know, we want to do the right thing, and sometimes we agree to do too much. And, you know, that's where I really need to look after myself. And I think it's one of the things that age has actually been a positive for me because I'm just too knackered now to do a lot of the stuff. And, you know, agreeing to be in 3 different places in one day, I cannot do that anymore. I have to structure my time really well. I've always worked full time. I've got a husband that works in heavy industry that knows a nout about what I do, and he's not particularly interested. He's a good support, you know, but I think it is finding that balance. But equally, it's about finding the ability and the courage to bring your whole self to work. And, you know, I'm responsible for a lot of people's employment. If I don't look after myself, things could go wrong really quickly. And, you know, I want people to, their job not to be at risk. So it's about structure and time. I think the biggest lesson I've learned in my whole work journey, but also my own kind of recovery journey, is about having been respectful of time, and my time is equally as important as other people's, and structuring your diary, getting enough rest and sleep, and age has helped me do that. Not burning yourself out, but really being in tune about where you're at. You know, we did something at work yesterday that actually triggered me. I was triggered. You know, being aware that I can still be triggered and re-traumatised today in the same way that I could have been 20 and 30 years ago, and it's having people that you can talk to about that. And sometimes that's hard as the chief exec because you're seen as the person that has all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I'm wise enough to have the mechanism to get to the right answer, but I don't always have it, and I still get things wrong. So it's having the courage to say you've got things wrong. It's having the courage to say you don't know all the answers. And it's having the courage to say, actually, I'm not okay. I need to step back a little bit until I figure this out for me. And you need time within your working week and your diary to be able to do that. And you need your weekends to rebalance.
When are you going to put all that in practice, Dot?
I get it right 80% of the time now, Richie, but I didn't always.
Yeah.
I wanted to, you know, we hear within, especially from people who within 12-step recovery, they'll talk about the disease to please. That's actually our biggest challenge for me, but it's our biggest challenge for our organisation as well, because our staff love to say yes. Mm-hmm. They love to say, I can do that.
Yeah, totally.
And we get ourselves into a bit of a mess when we do that too much.
Yeah, I find myself in that position sometimes. I'm really good at saying, yeah, I can do it, but I'm not very good at delegating anything.
Yeah.
So it all ends up on my plate. So, yeah, lessons to learn.
Yeah, and we all have families.
Yeah, totally. Finding things that take us away from recovery is also important for me, but not always easy to do. But Dot, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on. I admire everything you do in setting the example for other organisations to follow. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for the support you offer everybody.
Oh, and thank you, Richie. You're doing an amazing job yourself.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
For listening to the Recovery Toolkit podcast. If you took something positive from it, then why not subscribe? If you or somebody you know has been suffering gambling-related harm, why not head over to our website where you can join our community? The link is in the show notes.